Now, if you've bought one of these new, you've already saved yourself some money because these things seem to be impervious to depreciation.
Timing chains, head gasket issues, electrical gremlins, transmission problems, the list goes on and on of things you could expect in expensive European cars, but very unlikely to see in one of these.
Surely the driving experience is where everything goes bad, right? Cheap and nasty nightmare of a car that's just all style and no substance? Or a brilliantly packaged, cool and funky little nugget that should be your go-to when it comes to buying a used city car? Is a used Ignis hot or not, and should you buy a used one? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Now, it's normally at this point of the video that I would segue into something like, first of all, let's find out what commonly goes wrong with the exterior. But for the Ignis, it appears that nothing really goes wrong with the exterior. Seriously, we trawled through owners groups and forums, and about the only complaints we could find with the exterior was that, like so many modern cars now, the paint is a bit on the thin side and it can mark and chip pretty easily. And on some of the earlier model base spec GLs, the halogen headlights can do a pretty rubbish job at lighting the road ahead at night time, but that is so easily fixed. Either fit an aftermarket light bar or fit the LED lights afterwards, or just spend a little bit more money and buy a later model GL or a GLX. And you know what? That's honestly about it. No complaints about electronic issues, dodgy panel gaps, water leaks. Again, all problems that we've found in cars asking even 10 times what these cost. Actually, can someone out there please explain what the hell is going on here? Because how is it that cars like the Mercedes-Benz GLE or the Audi SQ7 or the BMW X4, they can all be guilty of a massive range of different exterior issues, but then this little Suzuki Ignis, for a fraction of the price, apparently offers superior build quality? What's going on? And it's not alone here. We covered a Suzuki Swift Sport recently, and that was pretty much the same. Hardly any exterior issues. I've got a theory on this. It's because these are just so simple compared to the premium European stuff where they're just so complex, and with complexity comes more things to go wrong. Just keep it simple and it'll actually be reliable. And speaking of simplicity, even when you're trying to work out which Ignis is going to be right for you, unlike the premium stuff, there's no need to decipher some impossible range of different options and trim specs. These things are super simple. Are you ready? 2 trim specs, 1 special edition, 2 transmissions, 1 engine, and 1 mid-cycle update. That's it. And yes, look, internationally there were also a few other models and drivetrains to choose from, but the good news doesn't end there. Guess how much these weigh? 865 kilos. And that means here in New South Wales and plenty of other regions, these things are one of the cheapest cars to register. And this also means they can be incredibly light on the consumables like brakes and tyres, as long as you don't drive like a complete dickhead, which in an Ignis can be a challenge, but we'll elaborate on this when we get behind the wheel. However, there is another consumable that not only Suzuki, but plenty of manufacturers will try to sting you on. And what's annoying about this is that they wear out really quickly, and when they wear out, they can be bloody dangerous. It's wiper blades. Please don't get ripped off buying OEM wiper blades or waste your time trying to decipher which of the 1,000 aftermarket ones are going to work. Instead, get yourself a set of Wipertech wiper blades by hitting the link below. This way you're going to get 15% off and free express shipping on really the only wiper blades that we choose to use ourselves or recommend. Now, speaking of saving money, let's talk about what these cost on the used market. Now, if you've bought one of these new, you've already saved yourself some money because these things seem to be impervious to depreciation. Although, if you're in the market for a used one, unfortunately this can mean that it's near impossible to find a bargain. When these were brand new here in Australia, they were asking anywhere from about $16,000 to $26,000. But on the used market right now, they range from about $10,000 to about $27,000. But this means that on average, an Ignis retains over 80% of its value. They are figures that the likes of Mercedes-Benz, Audi and BMW could only dream of. Now, let's talk about the looks, because for me, this is just another area that Suzuki have absolutely smashed it out of the park. I love that aesthetically, it doesn't take itself too seriously at all, but at the same time, maybe it's just the little chunky SUV thing, it still looks purposeful, like it's a tough little nugget. Although I do think it's laughable that technically this is an SUV, really? But look, I do love that on such a small and affordable car there are genuine design highlights like the pumped wheel arches with these contours that kind of accentuate them. And then obviously the Adidas logo. Obviously, this is not an Adidas logo. It's just a design cue that Suzuki brought back from the 1970 Suzuki WizKid. Also, it's cool that Suzuki did a bit of a mini here and offered a whole bunch of aftermarket aesthetic options like these mirror caps and the grille surround and fog light surrounds. Fun fact, these can be retrofitted, and there's actually a whole aftermarket scene to get different coloured versions. Actually, in India, there's quite the modification and tuning scene for these. Now, we're going to show you a picture of a modified Ignis in a second. Just get ready to kind of make a noise like, ready? How cool is that thing? Look at it. So the Ignis looks cool and the exterior seems to be pretty much fault-free, so it must be inside where things take a turn for the worse, right? Well, no. Again, we struggled to find any common issues. Unlike so many other cars out there, electrical faults in this, incredibly rare. Problems with the air conditioning? No, not really. About the only common fault or complaint we could find all had to do with the infotainment system. A number of owners complained about Bluetooth and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connection issues. The rear view camera can apparently play up. The audio quality through the microphones for Bluetooth calls is not great. Actually, the entire sound system is pretty bloody average. Now, thanks to some supply chain issues a couple of years ago, Suzuki did fit a whole bunch of Ignis with a larger aftermarket screen, but more recently they've gone back to the standard system. But look, either way, if you value sound quality when you're listening to tunes, or your family and friends being able to understand you when you're on a call via Bluetooth, the hot tip here is just to bin the standard infotainment system and microphone and speakers and just get aftermarket gear. Now, our hot tip here is to do what we've done with our cars and get your infotainment solution sorted through Automotive Superstore. Actually, no matter if it's infotainment systems or speakers or dash cams, aftermarket wheels, suspension parts, even four-wheel drive accessories, Automotive Superstore carry over 400,000 different parts and accessories. So chances are, whatever you need, they're going to have it. Plus, if over 400,000 parts and accessories seems just a bit too daunting, don't stress. All you've got to do is type your rego details into the website and it will display all the parts perfectly fitted to your car. And Automotive Superstore will guarantee that. Plus, they ship Australia-wide, so as long as you have the interwebs, you can go shopping. Check them out via the link below. Now, look, there's another, I'm not going to call it a complaint, but it's just something that you should be aware of. We are talking about a very budget-conscious car here, so let's not go expecting premium levels of materials and fit and finish, okay? For example, the center console, it's got a little bit of movement to it. And everything that you touch in here, and I mean everything short of the seats, is a very hard, scratchy plastic. The benefit of this, obviously, is that it's incredibly resilient to scratching and marking, but it does feel a little bit cheap, but the car's really affordable. But I think where Suzuki have distracted us from how scratchy the plastics are is just in the overall design and funkiness and use of colors. I love that it's a two-tone colored interior. Also, I love the body-colored door handles and center console. It's just a nice little highlight. This is such a more interesting place to sit than so many other cars in this kind of class and budget. And then there's the ergonomics, which honestly are so good. The seat comfort is lovely where everything is, driving position really good. There's an okay amount of adjustment. Steering wheel won't telescope in and out, but that's no big deal. But check this out. The doors open to nearly 90 degrees, and quite a few owners mentioned that because of the seat height, it's not so low like a normal hatchback, but it's not so high like a normal SUV. It's great for access for anybody that has mobility issues. Also, it feels more spacious than it is. It's almost like the Suzuki Spacia K car that we reviewed a little while ago. You look at that and look at this, they're quite small, but when you get inside, you're like, it doesn't feel small. Doesn't feel huge either, but I don't know, it just gives you this sense of space, and that's nice. However, one area that the Ignis cannot match its cousin, the Spacia, is when it comes to practicality. It's not terrible in here, but honestly, it's not fantastic. So you've got a spot for your phone here, but my phone's not that big and it barely fits. If you've got a larger phone, that's going to struggle. Two cup holders there, you've got a spot just here. This is designed specifically to collect dust and life's filth. Kind of a bigger cup holder here. Smallish glove box with a little shelf. A little shelf here. I don't know what the hell you're going to put in there. Anything you put in there is just going to fall straight out. It does have door bins, but they're not the biggest. You can fit I think like a 1 litre bottle here, but it's all quite scratchy again, so it's going to rattle around a bit. Nothing really under the seats. No sunglasses here, holder there. So it's okay. However, even though it is a budget-conscious little car, Suzuki certainly haven't held back when it comes to features and equipment. Although it does lack some active safety technology like autonomous emergency braking. Actually, that's why the Ignis is being discontinued in Australia at the moment. It just simply doesn't meet the new legislations in terms of safety requirements. Now, this is a shame because, look, we appreciate really good safety technology, but it's just annoying that the authorities maybe don't also focus on improving people's actual driving ability. Frustrating. Now in the back seat, I'm exactly 10 centimeters taller than Australian rapper and songwriter Ignis Azalea. This is in my driving position, and have a look at this. So much footroom. I thought my head would be squished up against the roof here, but there's I've got high hair today and they've still got room above my head. The seats though, they're not the comfiest. I feel like I'm sitting on a park bench, they're that firm. Also, the back seats have a fun trick. You can slide them back and forth like that, and also they're reclinable. And then as far as features and practicality in the back seat, honestly, not much. Uno pocket back there. You do have cup holders or bottle holders in the doors, but once you've got the door closed and you've got legs, you can't get to it. A spot to collect life's filth in here. Again, the doors open incredibly wide. Look at that. So access in and out is fantastic. And you could steal the front occupant's big bottle holder there. That's about it for features in the back. Now, as far as the practicality in the boot goes, actually, again, really great use of space. Fun fact, this capacity is nearly as large as cars in the class above this in terms of size. Plus, as I said before, you can slide the seats forward to give you even more boot space like this, as long as you haven't got any passengers in the back that have legs. And then you can also obviously put these seats down. Now, this is good. It's a shame that these don't flip forward or disappear into the floor, a bit like a Honda Jazz, but at least it's flat and flat here. There's just not going to be any sliding things in and out at all, but still, good amount of space. Okay, so the exterior and the interior so far are pretty wonderful. Surely the driving experience is where everything goes bad, right? No. Look, it's not perfect, but it's pretty awesome. Really, the only complaints we could find from owners was that many of them are just not achieving Suzuki's claimed fuel consumption rate of 4.9 litres per 100 Ks. They're more realistically getting about 5.5, which I think is still super economical, so stop complaining. Also, the road noise in here, especially at freeway speed, it can be a bit taxing, although when you update the infotainment system and speakers and everything, just get Automotive Superstore to fit some sound deadening as well, and that will sort it right out. But besides those couple of complaints, the Ignis is just wonderful to drive, and a massive thank you to Western Sydney Autos for lending us this one to have a steer of. Actually, look, to give you an idea of just how great these things are to drive, I remember way back in the day when they first came out, I was given one as a press car, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't really looking forward to it. Back then, if it wasn't an Aston Martin or a Porsche, I was pretty underwhelmed. So in other words, I was your typical car journalist wanker back then and only impressed with the really, really premium stuff. But nevertheless, look, I took the Ignis, went for a massive drive, and after about an hour, I remember feeling just really good inside, like I was happy at a very deep level. But then another hour went by and I found not only was I happy inside, I was just smiling so much my face hurt, and I was laughing constantly every time I went through a roundabout or zipped between some traffic or even just reverse parking. I was honestly having that much fun in an Ignis, really. Okay, granted that car was a manual. The CVT in this one does dilute the fun just a little bit, but regardless of that, I don't know how Suzuki have done this. This is clearly not a performance car in any way, shape or form, and yet it's still one of the most enjoyable cars I've ever driven. Even on the freeway, it just sort of hustles along. It's got this kind of energy to it, but then around town, it's phenomenal. The turning circle is absolutely brilliant. The steering, it's light, but it also has feel. It's not vague like it can be in many Volkswagens. And then because the wheels are out at the far corners of the car, everything from hammering through a roundabout just to trying to find a tight park or get it into a tight park is an absolute blast. Also, the vision out of it is excellent. And the ride quality. Now, I think the ride quality has actually improved with age. When they're new, they can sort of bobble about a little bit, but this is, I can't believe I'm saying this about an Ignis. really refined suspension tuning. Now you might think the power numbers in the graphic that we showed you before seem terrible for a modern car, but you have to remember, this thing weighs less than 900 kilos, so it actually does hustle along really nicely. Honestly, if your days, I'm just corners, and this is so fun. So good. Look, if your days are filled with just battling traffic and constantly trying to find a park, or the more taxing elements of a driving lifestyle, an Ignis is going to bring joy to the mundane aspects of your life. It really is that good. Or at least it will be until something under the bonnet goes bang, because what happens there? What are the mechanical issues with these things? Unfortunately, I can't speak to that because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
There really isn't much for me to talk about here this week. If it's been looked after, you're extremely unlikely to have, well, any serious problems, to be honest. If it's been neglected or has high mileage, you might see some oil consumption issues. If it's been really neglected, you might see some timing chain rattles. But overall, if it's being cared for, they are very reliable. Caution though, these cars are pretty cheap, and they're going to get much cheaper as time goes on. And the problem here, cheap cars can often fall through the cracks when it comes to servicing. They can get neglected. So if you're looking at one, obviously try and find a low mileage example, but more importantly, just try and find one that's had a good, thorough and well-documented service history. Look, as far as other negatives go, personally, I just wish it didn't look so much like a stormtrooper.
Now, something else we discovered when we were trawling through the owners groups and forums, and a massive thank you to everybody that helped us put this video together, is that it does seem that quite often when somebody buys an Ignis, they go on to buy another Ignis. For example, if they bought an Ignis in 2017, they'll often just trade it in on a newer example. Or if they need a second car for the family, it's another Ignis. We even found families of Ignis owners. Mum bought one and loved it so much that then dad buys one, and then the son or daughter buys one, and then the uncle buys one. It's like the Ignis just becomes a virus and spreads from person to person. Only that the Ignis virus is one that's really fun to catch. And we totally understand why that happens, and honestly, we encourage it because the Ignis can be a fantastic little car. Very, very few other cars offer such a broad range of skills, especially for what these cost. Plus, with such solid residuals, it even makes financial sense. Obviously, we'd be avoiding any with a sketchy history, and just make sure you get a full pre-purchase inspection carried out. But if it ticks all the correct boxes, yeah, buy one. Actually, about the only other car that we would possibly recommend, aside from an Ignis, is one of these. But if you already own an Ignis, can you let us know what your ownership experience has been like in the comments? That way, anyone shopping for one can get even more insight. If you value sound quality and your family and friends being oh my God. And go and get all your infotainment solutions sorted,